So I still believe that RFK Jr. is the most disturbing pick in Trump's cabinet of chaos. I know a lot of people are concerned about Kash Patel, and rightfully so. Others are more concerned about Tulsi Gabbard or Pete Hegseth. There's a whole lot of people worried about Elon Musk and his new imaginary position that he's been given to just go in there and cut anything he wants to cut out. So I understand why everyone is paranoid about a lot of Trump's picks for his cabinet, but RFK Jr. is the one that I'm the most concerned about, because the one thing that we all have in common, or I thought we had in common at least, is we all want to be in good health. I didn't think health was Democrat versus Republican. I didn't think health was conservative versus liberal. I thought that's something that we should all want to work together to be a healthier world. And now you've got RFK Jr., whose lawyer has now called for the government to revoke approval of the polio vaccine. And yeah, I actually said that out loud. When I read some articles about it, I sat there just floored, saying to myself, is this actually the reality now that we're going to be living in? And how in the hell can people think this was ever a good idea? But guess who's standing up now? Guess who decided to finally stick his turtleneck up and say, hey, this is getting dangerous? Oh, Mitch McConnell. Yeah, Glitch McConnell has now came out and said, boy, we're in dangerous times. And he said this because Mitch is a polio survivor himself, and he had this to say: efforts to undermine public confidence in proven cures are not just uninformed, but dangerous. He went on to say anyone seeking the Senate's consent to serve in the incoming administration would do well to steer clear of even the appearance of association with such efforts. Well, Mitch, if you want to talk about the steering clear of the appearance of association, you should have steered clear of Donald Trump when you had the chance. Because if you'd have steered clear of him when you had the chance, we wouldn't be sitting here in this mess today. See, Mitch McConnell is the worst type of politician to me, and honestly, when I make my Mount Rushmore of most hated people in politics, Mitch is always going to have a spot front and center because he's the absolute worst kind of politician. He plays politics, and yes, he does it very well. He plays the political game very well. But when he plays those political games, what he ends up doing is playing with people's lives, and people gets affected by it. Now he wants to stand up and say, oh, it's dangerous. This is uninformed. We can't have this. We should steer clear of this. He should have steered clear of it a long time ago, and we wouldn't be sitting here in this mess. We wouldn't be sitting here. I never thought I would actually be sitting here making a video about a moron wanting to revoke the polio vaccine. I never thought we would be there. I thought that was just going to be what the conspiracy theorists would talk about. I thought that would just be something Joe Rogan would entertain from time to time, and maybe someone would bump into me and go, hey, did you hear what RFK Jr. said on Joe Rogan? And I'd go, yeah, and I'd let it roll off of me. I had no idea that it would ever work its way into our government, and we would be having this conversation. But when I think about the dangers that RFK Jr. poses to all of us, it's something that should give everybody pause, regardless of whether you like me or my content, regardless of whether you agree with my political or religious views or whatever the case may be. This is something that should make us all stop and pause and say, wait, do we really want a guy like this in charge? And it automatically makes me go back to a couple of stories that I heard in my family growing up. I think back to one story my mom's told many times. I had an uncle. He was my great uncle. I never got to meet him because he passed away in the 60s. And he passed away in the 60s because the family got exposed to TB. And they had to take some medicine and take some shots to prevent themselves from getting TB. And my grandpa's youngest brother, even back then, was pretty much your modern day conspiracy theorist. He thought the whole thing was bullshit. He wasn't going to let the government tell him what to do. He wasn't going to take that medicine. He wasn't going to take those shots. He was going to have nothing to do with it. My grandpa, who was a lifelong Republican, a World War II veteran, said to him, you're going to have to take these shots. You're going to have to take this medicine because you've been exposed to this and you are a candidate. You know, you've got bad lungs. You're not in the best health. You're a candidate for this disease. So you better be careful. He wouldn't listen to his older brother. Bucked the system and died at 35 years of age. And my grandpa got up that morning, and when he went to work, the family was stunned that he was going. They were like, are you really going to work? Your baby brother just passed away. And he said, yeah, I got to go to work. And as he walked down the porch, he turned back to my grandmother and said, make sure you roll up his sleeves 2 turns, because that's how he always wore his sleeves, like this. He said, make sure you roll his sleeves up like that. And he went on to work. That might sound cold-hearted, but he tried his damnedest to tell his brother. He tried his damnedest to make him understand the seriousness of the situation, and he had to bury him at 35 years old. And that same man is the reason why that my grandmother lived until 2008, because she got spinal meningitis. And back then there was a procedure. The only thing that could save her was to go in and drain the fluid from her brain. And the only place they could do that was to drive her from Knoxville up to Lexington, Kentucky, and try out this new procedure that hadn't been done before. Her own dad, my great-grandfather, began talking about how that he had prayed about it, left it up to the Lord, and that's where they were going to leave it. Don't touch her. Just let her lay there on the bed and don't do anything. And my grandfather once again stood up and said, no, hold on, wait a minute. If there's a technique out there that we can try, we're going to try it to give her another chance at this life. He got into an argument with what would be his father-in-law. They got into a very heated argument about it. She's my daughter. Well, she's my wife, and I get to make the decisions. And they drove her up to Lexington, performed the procedure. And my grandpa passed away in 1992. My grandmother passed away in 2008, so she outlived him by that long. Because he had the foresight to put his faith in science. He had the foresight to put his faith in medicine and in doctors that knew more than he did. He was willing to admit that, you know what, I might know how to drive this D9 dozer and I might be great at landscaping, but I don't know jack shit about this, so I'm going to leave it up to people that do. And the funny part about that story that always cracked me up was my great-grandfather always held it against him because he didn't let the Lord take care of it. I would love to have a conversation with both those guys. I would love to pick both of their brains on that one. But those were stories that I heard growing up. Then I had to live one myself, and I don't like telling the story, so I'll just give you the Cliff Note version. But I had to bury a cousin at 35 years of age. I buried his ashes myself. And I had to do so because him and his mother listened to the likes of RFK Jr. and Joe Rogan and every other crackpot that Rogan had on his podcast. You can go to their Facebook pages and see where they were sharing those links before they passed. That's why it hit such a sore spot with me, and that's why RFK Jr. hit such a sore spot with me. And when I was a teenager, I used to have a room decked out in all sorts of, rock and roll and pop culture memorabilia. I had posters of Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Martin Luther King. And on my wall, I had a picture of Bobby Kennedy because I've always admired the Kennedys. But to hell with RFK Jr. He's a disgrace to that name. And when people says to me, the Kennedys wouldn't be Democrats today, the Kennedys wouldn't be that today, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth. I can't believe that we're here, but we are. And we're going to be here for a long time. So we got to buckle up and get ready. And I ain't out to win the popularity contest. I don't care if certain family members never speak to me again when they hear me tell these stories. Where did I exaggerate those stories? What was not true about it? They were the same stories that I've had family members grow up hearing those same stories. They hear those same stories about how their great uncle died and they never got to meet him. They heard the same stories about how their grandmother wouldn't have lived. They wouldn't have lived to see her either. We grew up hearing those stories. And now we could potentially live in a world where shit like that would happen. Thanks to a crackpot who decided to get drunk and stage a Cubs death. And it's ridiculous that we're even here. What this really reminds me of, in all honesty, have you ever had someone in your family, maybe a sister or somebody that just dated the absolute piece of trash? And you tried to tell her the guy was a piece of trash. You tried to tell her the guy was using her, and you tried to tell her, and she finally broke up with him. And you think, oh man, well, we got rid of that guy. He's gone. Our family don't have to worry about him. But a couple of years pass and she gets back with him. And when she gets back with him, she brings all of his crazy family with him. That's what it feels like in the United States of America. We got rid of the toxic boyfriend once. Now he's back with all of his crazy ass friends and they all want to crash the party. So we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And it's going to suck. And I'm not trying to bring down the room. I'm just being real. I think these days we're going to have to be real, and we're going to have to say things that's going to sting, and we're going to have to say things that might cause certain cousins to never speak to us again, and that's okay, because it's the bigger picture we have to look at in situations like this. Mitch McConnell standing up now, too little too late, pal. We see through you for the spineless politician you truly are. That dude's been in office ever since I was 2 years old. He ain't done a damn thing for my part of the world except trick people into thinking that he's better than a Democrat. I wished I had more. I wished I had more to think. And I'm sure if I sit here and think longer and harder, I'll come up with more things to say about this. But it's just truly disturbing to me that we're sitting back listening to this moron want to revoke a vaccine it's just insanity. It truly is. But I appreciate you guys for hanging with me during these insane times. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 500,000, 500,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. I just hit 100,000 back in March or April of this year. So it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a hell of a year. And I really appreciate all of you. Shout out to the Midas Touch Network and for all their help and support. And we'll just keep standing on the right side of history. And we'll try to not repeat it. But we're up against people who wants to make it great again, which means let's go back in time to when our great uncles died because they were stubborn. It's truly pathetic.